Hey everybody, welcome to another Probably Private. I'm Catherine Jarmal, and today we're going to talk about busting Claude Code myth around privacy and security. So let's go through them. I'm going to tell you probably some harsh realities that I'm not sure you're ready to hear, but I'm going to try to give you strategies to think about it. Okay? Okay. First and most important myth that you understand is that sandboxing will work. So I've been testing now for quite some time the Claude Code built-in sandboxing. I mean, obviously they put some thought and effort into it. I'm not trying to say anybody's not doing their job, but I am here to say by no means does it work, right? So the sandboxing is there. Sometimes, for whatever reason, it just doesn't even work, as in it's not supposed to read file X. It does so anyways. Other times, and of course, this is probably dependent on your model, right? What model you're using. So if you want to use local models, check out my video on that. But yes, the model can easily just run other commands that you don't expect and that are then not checked. There's no validation of your sandbox rules against partial strings, against, other methods for doing the same thing. So lexical similarity, these types of things, there's none of that. And it means that the sandboxing that's built in is pretty useless, I would say, for actual real sandboxing. Now, my tip for you is maybe they'll fix it. So at least familiarize yourself with some of the concepts in the sandboxing. And I think it can be a good guidance for how you might actually build your real sandboxing, which I would recommend using VMs or containers or whatever it is that your organization uses. And I would even go so far as to say, don't put it on your actual machine, like put it on another machine and then be able to work back and forth between those machines. I hope that's available to you. If not, I just want you to be cautious. So this is the other thing that I want you to think about is people think they can change the prompt, like the Claude MD file, or I've seen people say like, well, it only reads from your working directory. That is very untrue. That is false. So yes, does the Claude MD file help with some things? Yes, but I would think of the Claude MD file as more telling it what to do, not what not to do. I would not rely on a Claude MD file to say, please don't go into this data folder and read this customer data I've copied over. That's not going to work. I just promise you it's not going to work. That's fine. We have other strategies, but I would say just know that Claude Code by default in quote unquote problem solving, has a default escape the sandbox hatch and escape all rules hatch. It's actually a flag that it sets by default to allow it to, debug outside the box. But B, literally on startup, will go sniffing around your system, see what libraries you have installed, other telemetry, and. And so what I want you to know is if you're running Claude Code, and especially if you're running Claude Code with an Anthropic backend, no, it's going to go sniffing around your whole computer. Not maliciously, I'm sure, I hope. But what I am telling you is it certainly is doing that. So act appropriately. Don't have stuff anywhere near don't have confidential documents anywhere near where you might be working with Claude Code, which is why, again, thinking through VMs, other machines, things like that is a good step. And I would also, if you're like me and you're a little curious, I'll share some links to how to spy on Claude Code. So I've been using some eBPF libraries to look at things like file access, process spawning, these types of things. So you can take a look yourself if you're into such things. And then I've also been man in the middling my own sessions to take a look at prompts and system calls and information that's been sent. Now, if you're not in privacy and security, don't worry about doing that. It's not worth it for you. Just know to be really careful, not only of your working directory, but some other common directories that Claude will look in. And I'll list some of those. And to just also know that stuff that's installed on your computer, especially if you're using Linux, like your etc. files and these types of things, that they might be scanned to think about system capabilities, and other CLI tooling like AWS CLI and other things like this might be looked at for versioning and other things like this. So just know that, act appropriately, and I'll be doing a deeper write-up, so stay tuned for more. Okay, third thing is probably it's already evident that I don't think you should be uploading customer data to Claude Code or to Anthropic, right? Perhaps it's been cleared by your legal team and you have there a data retention policy or something else like this. That's fine, but I still think it's probably a pattern that if you can avoid it, you should avoid it. And this is also just good practice for using any third party to think through, is there another way for us to sanitize the data before we send it to third-party systems that we may or may not have control of, and that may or may not be the security paradigm that we want to adhere to. And so for this, I would highly recommend starting to look into synthetic data generation. This means if you're like a data person like me and you need to use data as part of your coding workflow, how can we generate data that's similar enough, but still imaginary, synthetic, that is going to work for your testing and setup that you do with AI? And then you're going to be able to CI/CD with the real data in a staging or testing environment, iterate, change, and then go to production, right? And what I would recommend doing is first starting, if you can, with fully synthetic data. I'll link to a few examples of libraries with that, but that means, data that really comes from nowhere. It's completely random, but it has whatever characteristics you're looking for. So if you need a float, it has a float. If you need a string, it has a string. If you need something that looks like a real address or a phone number, it's those things, right? So there's many libraries you can use. I like using Faker, but there's many libraries you can use. You can even use an LLM to help you generate, but your results may vary on how random LLM data is, obviously. And then second is if you need things that hold particular statistical relationships between data, you can either write a generation suite around something fake and do corrections. So that's often what I've done when I'm working with clients on really sensitive data is we've kind of built out a synthetic data generation that mocks these types of consistencies or relationships between particular parts of data. Or if that doesn't work, you can see if you either do LLM assisted or other deep learning assisted synthetic data generation. There's numerous companies that offer this. There's also some with open source libraries that offer this. The main thing here is about memorization. I'll link the playlist. Depending on if the model trains extra on your data, it could end up reproducing patterns in your real data. Try to think about if differential privacy fits, if the library or the software you're using offers differential privacy, consider using that and then having some validation rules at the end that throw out anything that, because you use differential privacy, lies outside of whatever distribution you're expecting. And there's actually a lot of cool research on how we can generate representative, statistical, differentially private data, synthetic data. And I'll link to some of my most aha research moments that I saw, which was related to the NIST synthetic data challenge. Okay. I'll also link to an article from Damien Desfontaines, who did a really cool talk, I think at the Privacy Engineering Conference or a Usenix conference, one or the other, on why the synthetic data that you think is synthetic is maybe not as synthetic as you thought. Okay, so please use synthetic data. Don't be sending Anthropic, here's the entire customer database. Can you write me a new Python script that does this or that? Okay, just please. Thank you. Okay, then finally, I've already posted some videos on using Claude Code with local models. What I want you to think about is, when is this workflow particularly sensitive? And when is it maybe less sensitive? And I know that's putting extra burden on you. And sometimes when you're starting a project, I'm the same way. Like, I don't know. I don't know where this project's going to go. But what I'd like for you to start thinking about, just putting your security and privacy hat on, is how can I make workflows where when I notice it's going in a direction that I would want a bit more privacy and security mindset, how can I switch, right? How can I say, you know what, Claude, save that memory here, save our to-do list here. I'll see you in the next session. And then fire up a session with your local model and be like, hey, can we review this to-do list and can we get started on these things? For me, it also involves, because I have a separate machine running Claude Code, it also involves transferring files back and forth. And sometimes deciding, you know what, I'm going to take over from here. I'm going to write a little bit code non-AI assisted, and then I'm going to move it back to that machine and continue my workflow. I'm adding a bump in the road, and that's kind of okay right now, because I think that it's very clear to me that the privacy and security paradigms that we've learned over decades in industry, that we don't yet have a real way to build them into the workflows consistently. So I'm asking for you to be kind of the manager of that task. I mean, if you want to write an agent whose job it is to tell you to stop, you can do that too. I'd be curious if it works. And if so, please share your prompt for it. But I think we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to any customer data we're managing or any other sensitive documents that we're managing, that we really start thinking through. And I think the more that we learn that, the more we learn, okay, what stuff can we just run without oversight? And what things do we really need to watch out for? And we probably build new skills and paradigms within ourselves and the software that we use, so that we can strive for better privacy and security in the long run, which is what I'm here for, and maybe some of what you're here for. So let me know, what are your thoughts? Are there other myths that I missed? Because, a lot of conversations, I can only hear so many. So tell me what other myths you've heard, and I look forward to continuing to learn and explore privacy and security in this kind of more AI assisted, or especially in these quasi agent types of frameworks. More coming soon. All right, I'll see you next week.